Welcome to the Intelligent Investing Podcast, where modern portfolio theory can suck it. A student of the School of Graham and Doddsville and a clergy member of the Church of Warren Buffett. Here's your host, Eric Schleien.
Hi, this is Eric Schleien. You are listening to the Intelligent Investing Podcast. Today we have back on John King, aka the King of LA, co-author of Tribal Leadership and inventor of the Tribal Leadership work. Welcome back to the show, my friend.
Well, thank you, my friend, the King of LA. Haven't heard that in a while.
Well, you're wearing your crown tonight.
Thank you so much.
I'm just a prince that maybe one day I could be as kingly as you. Be fantastic.
Well, nothing. Just keep in mind that it is lowercase k on the king there.
Well, I'm going to uppercase you on the king there because I think it deserves an uppercase for all the things that you've accomplished in your life. You deserve an uppercase king.
Well,
and if they tell you lowercase, you tell them that Eric sent you, and Eric said uppercase, and that's
go talk to Eric.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thanks, Eric.
With some of your friends, I'd be too much of a pussy to stand up to them. I'd be like, okay, lowercase.
Well, anyway, thank you. That's very, very, very refreshing and fun and funny, and I'm glad to be back.
Good. So what's been going on in John's world recently? What's new? I feel like you're always traveling. You're always in some country I can't pronounce. So what's the dealio? What's been going on?
Well, I've been in unpronounceable countries. Prior to, the last time I talked to you since then, I was in Uzbekistan in late June for an incredible wedding of the twin boys of a business partner of mine over there, a guy who runs the Russia kind of business and the European business. And his twin sons got married to two beautiful girls, both named Camilla. So they're Hassan and Hussein, and it's Camilla and Camilla. So I went to that.
Okay. Yep.
Well, and it was a big deal wedding. So the festivities of it and the families getting together and giving partners for each other lasted for over 2 months.
Huh.
So I was there for that. Really joyous. To see them. I consider them to be my family in that part of the world. And then I was in Tashkent, Uzbekistan, and I taught a little bit at the Ground Zero accelerator there. Phenomenal experience. And then I went to Bulgaria and was 3 weeks at American University in Bulgaria teaching the Central Eurasian Leadership Academy. 40 amazing people from 10 different countries in Central Asia. And then I left there and I went to Georgia, the Republic of Georgia. And
I was going to say, not the place above Florida.
No. This is old school Georgia. And I taught
where kings go.
Where kings go. Yeah, exactly. They had them at one point in time.
Exactly.
And just amazing people.
This is why I don't bring morons onto my show, because they wouldn't understand that shit.
Well,
I'm a moron-free zone.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, sometimes I feel like a moron. I'll be in Uzbekistan, don't speak any Uzbek, and I'll be in Bulgarian, don't speak any Bulgarian.
What is the reaction? I mean, do people know when you go to these countries? I got to assume there's a group of people that just don't know who the hell you are, right? There's just like this American dude just hanging who's going to teach us something. Do you get some like funny looks, or do people generally know what your deal is? Like, what's the deal with that?
It's however it is before we start communicating with each other, and then I go into the room, and usually within 3 or 4 minutes, we're all kind of on the same page and present. I get to be. They put me in front of intelligent people, well-rounded people, worldly people even, who are on their way up in business or entrepreneurs, or maybe they're in the government. And so I'm always around people. Their demographic is from age 27 to about 40. And
do any of these government officials though get like weirded out, but like they think maybe you're like a spy or something?
Well, it's funny. When I first started doing it, the answer is yes. When I first started doing it, they thought I was from the CIA. But after they were around me,
I wouldn't be shocked, honestly.
Well, it's gone on. It's gone on. But the funny thing is that the leadership academies that I teach in are completely apolitical. And I think that's the reason why we can put people from Mongolia and Turkmenistan and Georgia and Azerbaijan and Afghanistan and put them all together and have a fruitful conversation about leadership, is to have it any kind of right or left or political point of view. It's just not in the conversation. And what I see people of an age demographic that they realize very quickly that they've got holes in their game around leadership, and they want to fill in those holes as fast as they can because they know that someday they're going to be the premier of the country, or they're going to be the CEO of a large NGO or something like that.
Are people more open to it in these countries than in America? Because my general sense is people are still like, I don't know what the proper word is, but like borderline retarded when it comes to leadership in the United States, and they don't get it. And they don't even know they don't get it, which is like scarier to me. Yeah,
closer to the second thing that you said, not knowing that you don't know. Mainly people who have any aspect of leadership training at all are people who have come through some sort of military circumstance, or they've gone into some business school, even a first-tier business school, and they've been taught an hour or two of leadership somewhere along the line in getting their MBA. So as a rule, most people really don't know what leadership is, and what they think it is they think it's just being kind of a louder and more persuasive manager.
It's kind of sad, huh?
It is, because there's a lot being missed. And then the other thing about it is we're privileged here. And so when I'm teaching in the universities here, the people in the MBA programs know that they're lining up their life to become the CEO of something important, and so they tend to be that guy who doesn't know and doesn't know that they don't know, and so it's hard to contribute to them. On the other hand, I get over to Central Asia or Southeast Asia. I'm going to Vietnam. I'll be in Hanoi in January. Or I'm going to Oman, which is in the Gulf states, in March, teaching at leadership academies, and they're hungry. They're hungry for that. And these are people whose MBAs come from Cambridge.
Shit, I'm living in the wrong country.
Well, the thing about it is you're living in the right country, but we've got the wrong rhetoric. I'm sorry.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Say more about that.
Well, it is impossible now, and maybe you notice this too. I think a lot of my friends have, that it's impossible to go through the day without being buried under tremendously biased and disrespectful propaganda around politics on both sides.
Yeah.
And over there, I am sure it's going on probably more, because when I look at the statistics, I see that they're even more corrupt than we are. But but the thing is, I don't speak Georgian, and I don't speak Uzbek, and I don't watch television over there.
Is that what their language is called? Uzbek? Is that really?
People from Uzbekistan.
Huh.
It's the Uzbek tribe. They're all tribes. Why I'm a kind of a big deal over there is because I'm the tribal guy.
Yeah.
And so
and they're very communal from the old Soviet Union. Is it the fact that they're a former Soviet country, there's still this like communal thing going on?
Yeah, well, they've always had the tribe thing going on. It's been going on for thousands of years. These people were essentially, they were nomads.
Writing a fiction or nonfiction book is a big deal, an exciting adventure, a challenge to conquer. And you can conquer it. The question is, will you? Innovative Editing's free weekly e-letter, The Genuine Writer, offers the advice and encouragement you need to answer yes. Sign up for The Genuine Writer today at innovativeediting.com/the-genuine-writer. That's innovativeediting.com/the-genuine-writer. Let's make your big deal happen.
They lived on the in the steppes and rode their horses and hunted down foxes and wolves.
Because they're more crazy about their patriotism than like we are, and some like you go to the Midwest, and I think like people there are like some like they have this extremism, but then you get to like people talking about like their mother Russia and whatever, like it gets intense.
Yeah. Well, it's they're proud of their country, and they're in most cases what they're doing is they're recovering the nation state that was their country prior to 75 years of Soviet occupation. So when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1989 to 1991, and they pulled out, they just left, and they left everything kind of Soviet in place. And then what happened was there was a vacuum, and immediately the democratic process was installed, and they voted in the ministers and whoever the new president is of these 10 different countries. The thing about it is, then these guys got in there, and they were corrupt. They were the ones who knew how to work the system, and for the most part, it is now 25 years later, and for the most part, they are still in. But what's starting to happen is they're starting to die. They're starting to, die off, these people who seized power back in the early 90s. And so the countries have been coming to life. The people are interested in starting businesses. They're actually starting to get engaged with the market and creating a little market of their own, rather than living in this centralized Soviet-style kind of political system. So they're kind of figuring it out. It's like somebody who's waking up after having been 75 years asleep. And when they went to sleep, it was communism. And now they're waking up, and now it's capitalism.
Isn't there a lot of people, though, that still, like, they still kind of, like, reminisce of, like, wanting to have the Soviet Union back? Or is that more of a Russian thing than anything? No. There are people who liked it better the old way. Mostly people that are older. Yeah.
Older. It was interesting.
It's like a comfort thing, right?
Well, I told you about this wedding that I went to. Yeah. I went to the birthday party of the father of one of the Camillas. Great guy. Spoke no English, but we sat around and we had dinner together, and he had the guy sitting next to him who was his brother, it turned out.
Okay.
Kind of started in on me and asking me what I did, and and when he found out what I did and everything, he became very interested in. And his question is, well, what do you think of the Russians? And what do you think of the?
I'd be scared to answer that question, man.
Well, at a certain point, I kind of looked at my host, and I realized he was giving me a "be careful here" kind of look. So I started answering, and I just started answering in a pleasant sort of way, and looking for an opening where I could ask him what he did.
I'm scared to ask you questions about it, honestly.
Well, the thing is, the guy. I asked him. I said, "What do you do?" And he said, "I'm retired." And we kind of laughed. And I said, "Well, retired from what?" And he said, "Well, he worked for the government." And I said, "Oh, really? What'd you do for the government?" And he said, "Well, he worked for the Politburo." And I went, "You worked for the Politburo?" He said, "Yeah, he ran the Politburo." So he was the head commie. And I'm sitting there laughing at him, and I goes, and I'm a capitalist, and you're the head commie. I said, look at this. So my comment was, maybe what we're here for is to build a bridge, from one to the other, and we ended up having a great evening together. But that guy was he was not starting out as my friend.
Yeah, and then you did all that culture magic on him.
Yeah, well, listened. It's mostly listening, as you know, Eric.
Yeah. That's another thing, right, that gets lost in politics and American business.
Yeah, don't you notice? I mean, they're not listening to each other.
Even something I've noticed, too, is, CEOs are trained to be able to give, good presentations and be salesy people, but the CEO that can actually share from the heart and also authentically listen to people is kind of a rare breed, which again just blows my mind that you have people, at some of the largest and most reputable companies in the world, that are headquartered in the United States and do business in the United States and abroad, right? A lot of these, multinational conglomerates are based in the United States. And some of these CEOs are just fucktwats when it comes to being able to actually be leaders, and they just think that being a CEO and have an authority thing, and that they can manage really well, that they're somehow leaders, and they use a lot of those buzzwords. It just blows my mind, actually.
Well, I agree with you, and I find that to be more of an issue in the United States. And
so what's that about? That's what I was kind of alluding to before. Yeah,
it's about stage 3. It's about stage 3 in action.
Because we're a very individualistic society, right? So
we are.
That's probably to do with it, right?
Well,
the American dream, go from stage 2 to stage 3. Look how great I am now.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Well, and not only that, but everybody is a writer, producer, director, and star of the movie of their own life in which they are the hero. And they're driving towards being the kind of hero that can dominate everyone around them.
Wouldn't it be an interesting twist of fate if these former communist and just fascist fucking countries, if those are the ones that actually become the best leaders in the world because they just get community in stage 4 at a easier level than...
Well, they definitely get community better than we do. There's no question about it. I mean, when I look at Russia and I go, well...
I feel like China would be one too. That would just get it better, right?
Well, that's a whole blank Chinese wall.
Okay.
Or, outside of the big deal with China, and it's all over the place in Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan and even around to Sri Lanka where I've been and so on like that, is they have the project. You weren't alive at the time, but there was a time when we had a national project called Send a Man to the Moon during the 60s.
Heard about that one.
Yeah, and everybody was excited about it, and it was like something that everybody was playing in. It was like a major, major game. Well, the Chinese have revived the Silk Road, which was the overland route from China to heading back to Europe. Mm-hmm. And then they've got something, it's called the Belt, and the Belt is a series of harbors that the Chinese control around them. So in that part of the world, with the Belt and Silk Road project that the Chinese are doing, they have pretty much got it sewn up, at least the basic parts of it, and they will be the dominant power there for sure.
Also, politicians sounded way cooler back then too, right? When JFK is talking about going to the moon, it just sounds cool.
Oh yeah,
and we've devolved to talking about Space Force.
Yeah. Well, and that's a high conversation, Space Force.
Ridiculous. Here, listen to this. Hold on. I have the JFK "We choose to go to the moon" speech. You remember that one?
Oh, very well.
A few years before my time. Yeah. I want to play it because it just... This guy's way cooler. I mean, you don't have to like his politics at all, but just way more of a badass. Do you agree?
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I think Trump's a pussy personally, but all right, let's listen to this.
Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too.
It's cool, right?
Yeah, that's actually pretty much around the last time in American politics that we heard speeches of that, written with that grace and delivered with that power.
So what happened?
It became business and business as usual. It became it's the economy, stupid, and it became arguments about why we can do what we can do, and if you don't agree with me, you are, after 40 or 50 years of us moving race relationships forward, they got moved back 40 years really, really quickly, and not by Trump, but by his predecessor.
How so? That's an unpopular view for a lot of people. I'm curious.
It is. But here's a guy. I mean, I was for him. I was really for him. I was pulling for him.
Did you faint when he started when he was running for president? Did you faint listening to him?
Did I faint? What do you mean by faint?
Remember he was like we're talking about Obama, right?
Yeah.
So when he was running for president that first time around, you'd have people fainting in the audience. They'd be like, "Oh, get her some water. She fainted." It was like a thing, and it became it became almost like this like cultural meme because every speech people were fainting.
Yeah, I never saw that, but here's what I thought. Here's what I thought we elected. Mm-hmm. I thought we elected the guy who was actually going to go into the inner cities and clean up the gangs and the drugs, and really get those people who live in the inner cities, regardless of what their color is, really get life lifted up for them, and so on like that. Instead, it became worse, and he became a guy that if you questioned anything that he had to say, he accused you of being a racist. And so he created this huge background conversation around racism that has just taken our country backwards in my mind. Then the next guy comes along, and he's kind of a loudmouth, and and so he gets tarred with that. And meanwhile, what didn't happen?
Well, I think he gets off to that too, right? It's like it's part of the strategy.
He might, but the thing is that what didn't happen was our cities did not get stabilized, didn't get cleaned up and stabilized. And now we're, 12 more years along, and it's a bigger problem than ever in our inner city.
I'm in an interesting position right now, defending Obama, but what would he do to clean up cities as president? They don't really have that. The president doesn't have that power, though, to clean up a city.
Well, he had the power of modeling. He was, here's
modeling?
a guy modeling.
Okay.
He's intelligent. He's well educated. He's articulate. He's graceful and gracious. He is, by any consensus, he's cool, like that. He had an enormous. He and his family were a successful family and a successful-looking family, and it was like, to a culture where 73% of the culture of the births are out of wedlock.
Is it really that high?
Yeah, it is. Wow. It is. Yeah, 73%. And because, and it's not because they're inherently bad. It's because of the inherently well-intended but really bad social programs that we put in that chase the man out of the family. And so men who are not occupied with women get in trouble. and when men get in trouble, they go to jail. And so we've got a huge black population in jail, mainly because the social system environment they were in was antithetical to men, and yet the women are, it's all about single moms raising their kids, and you're never going to get out of it, or very difficult to get out of it in large numbers as a single mom with kids to raise.
You think, part of that is probably a reaction, though, right? To, you could say most of American history was horrible to women.
Well, I'm not a woman. But
come on, they didn't have voting rights. You had laws on the books that if you were someone's wife, you were basically your husband's property and didn't really have any rights. It was pretty messed up for women for a long time too.
Well, messed up looking from the morality of you in today's day and age.
Correct.
It was actually just what it was back in the day.
And there were some.
They got the vote. By the way, they got the vote in 1928. So and they're the larger slice or a metric of the of the culture. So they've had access since 1928 at the very least.
Yes, that's true. But you could, my mom was in, she did retail when she was younger, and she talked about how difficult it was as a woman being a buyer in some wholesale department store.
There's no question that it's more difficult for the women. My mother worked also, and she actually, my mother started out as a secretary, as a civilian employee for the Department of the Air Force. And she had a master's in geology. She started and a master's in English. And she started out as a secretary at what they call GS3 level, even though she tested it at GS9. But she stayed with the job, and she raised her kids. She had 3 kids. And she worked her way up, and she was assigned to the Air Force Technical Library, which is the library that is in charge of all the information about nukes. And over a period of time, about 25 years in, she actually became the librarian, the technical librarian for the Department of the Air Force for nuclear information. So, but it wasn't easy. And I think she probably had to fight for everything she did. I think she was doing it because it would make it easier for her daughter, which it was quite a bit easier for her daughter, and easier for her grandchildren. I think that's why people do this. That's what leadership is really about, that arc of leadership, of thinking from not just your situation here and now today, but thinking from the standpoint of what is it that I'm accountable to for my parents and my grandparents, the wants and the dreams and the desires that they had for their children, ultimately for me. And what is it that I stand for as a legacy or a gift that I'm going to provide in the world that I'm building for my children and my grandchildren. Leaders think from grandparent to grandchildren. They think about it's a time space of about 150 years. That's leaders think that. Managers, on the other hand, and what goes on in America is we think in 90-day increments.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a little different. Now, I don't know. And, wow, I'm sure it's more difficult for women. It's more difficult for minorities. It is at least there's a law that protects them. There's at least an interpretation of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence that actually protects the rights of people against being discriminated against by the government.
Yeah, right.
Not a lot of you don't have that in Russia. You just don't, and you don't have that in any of the Central Asian states or the Middle.
No, equal protection under the law is a big deal.
Yeah, it is a big deal, and and you will find individual cases of discrimination. Sure, because it's humans discriminating against humans. But in terms of, is it against the law to do it, or is it unconstitutional, and there are rights involved, and the people are protected, particularly in terms of their relationship to the government. There's not very many countries, and I mean even including Canada, that have the protections that are built in. And we got a midterm coming up, and we could easily lose some more of those rights. They're getting chipped away at.
Yeah.
As we go forward.
I wanna just pivot the conversation a little bit more to more business stuff and more also like what you've been working on. I mean, we talked a little bit. For anyone listening, if you wanted to learn more about John's tribal leadership work, I'll put the original episode that you were on in the show notes. But you're always working on stuff. What have you been working on? I think it's been almost a year, at least a year since you've been on. So what's been new? What's been going on?
Well, a lot of exciting stuff, at least as far as...
Do you like wine by any chance?
Do I like wine? Yeah, I like wine.
I feel like you look like a wine guy. Like if I had to picture you with something, I would picture you with a glass of red wine.
Well, that's nice.
And wearing a tux.
I lived in tuxes at one point in my life. I got it.
you have the demeanor of someone who drinks red wine and walks around with tuxes.
And spills it on my tux.
No, I don't. I mean, you can say that. That's not how I see you, but maybe that's the real you.
Well, that's very very generous.
I have some grandiose vision of you that doesn't spill wine on your tux. So.
Well,
we've all spilled wine.
Red wine would be my choice, and I like tuxes a lot. And yeah.
So
okay.
You have a you're still in Albuquerque?
I am still in Albuquerque.
Do you have a Trader Joe's near you?
We do.
Do they sell wine at your Trader Joe's?
Oh yeah.
Trader Joe's, do you know why their wine is so cheap?
No, I don't.
Do you know their wine is really cheap? Like, their stuff's cheap, generally, but their wine, you get some really good deals. So Trader Joe's, their model is they buy everything in cash, and then they buy it in bulk. So if you're, like, some wine distributor, and, Trader Joe's will just pay you in cash and a lot at one time and get it off your inventory, you'll get discounts, and then they pass on a lot of those savings to the consumer. So their margins are like razor thin, which is why like Trader Joe's and Aldi, like it's very difficult to compete with them. So I got this. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing this, but it's an Italian wine called Amarone della Valpolicella. That's clearly I mispronounced that, but that's okay. This is not a wine show. Otherwise, I'd be real screwed. It's a 2014. So I bought this bottle for like $13, $14 at Trader Joe's a few months ago. And it goes, you can buy it online for like between like $30, $40, depending on the company selling it. It is so damn good. I'm drinking it right now as I'm talking to you, and I'm not even that big of a wine drinker. I'm not a big alcohol person, but like this one glass of it's so smooth and it's like silky and grapey and
nice.
It just really makes...
Well, that's a very interesting kind of twist on the business model for vintners, particularly in California, but all over the world.
Yeah.
They grow their wines, and either they bottle their own house wine and put their own label on it with their own grape, or they sell their grapes by the ton to the big guy, like Gallo wineries, for example, or some of the other with BV or something like that. And what happens is all the farmers in Napa and Sonoma sell their excess grapes, and the grapes are all blended into a wine and then bottled and sold out as a Gallo wine, for example. Gallo is a blend of about 15 different wines. And so the vintners, the wine growers, how they've made their living is selling to the wineries. Now, good. We've got a little competition in the marketplace, and obviously Trader Joe is buying it. And then what they're doing is they're just bottling the wine, it sounds like.
Very good.
That particular grape. So interesting.
Well, this is not a Trader Joe's.
Watching them how they work their business model. Yeah. Oh, no. But it's there, and somebody's doing it, and that's what they're doing. So I can see this as a way to keep the cost down at the same time, bring you a better wine. It's very, very interesting. It's interesting to watch how many ways you can skin a cat, how many ways that you can work a business plan.
Yeah.
So this would be one of them.
It's also, I also think it's, Charlie Munger, vice chairman of Berkshire Hathaway, he talks about if you want to learn something or understand something, sometimes the best thing that you can do, I'm paraphrasing, this is not direct words, but some of the best things that you can do is invert the problem, right? So it's like, if you want to learn about good business practices, learn really bad business, learn bad business practices and then avoid doing those things.
Right.
So he has I just want to say one more thing. So he has a saying where he's like, if you want to, learn how to be happy, avoid doing things that make you unhappy.
Exactly. Like my sister says, it's dumb to have a bad time.
Right. I like that.
It's kind of duh. But another thing, and I don't know whether it was Munger or his lesser-known partner, but said something about, I would not, this is a paraphrase, I would not argue a point if I did not know the other side of the issue even better than my opponent.
Yeah, Charlie says that, yeah.
That's what I thought. Yeah, and I've always been impressed by people who think that way, that actually say, I will tell you frankly, I'm spending a lot of time in Central Asia in post-Soviet countries and in because for all of my life I've heard about communism, and I thought, you know what, I think I'll go over there and I'll just be in the belly of the beast and learn something about it.
Yep.
And I remember when I came back the very first time and you were talking with me, I remember saying to you, it's not what we think it is.
Yeah. I was just having this conversation with someone recently. There was an article about a company called Trupanion. Trupanion, they're a pet insurance company in the United States. And for full disclosure, I'm a shareholder. The CEO, Daryl, he, you want to talk about a company that's doing stage 4, stage 5 stuff in pet insurance of all things.
Wow.
Their culture is incredible. Really, really incredible. And they're always looking to improve it even more. But there was an article recently that was talking about how Trupanion is overvalued and the Washington state regulator is looking into them and they might lose business in Washington state for illegal insurance practices. And clearly this guy did not know, unless I'm very, very wrong, but it doesn't seem like this guy understands the business at all, because these are things that we all knew. And I just remember talking to a friend of mine. I was like, I could have written a bearish case on Trupanion better than this guy who was bashing Trupanion. Like, I could have bashed Trupanion much more intelligently than this guy could have. And we were talking about that.
Yeah.
But it's amazing, right? It's like, if you're going to talk shit about someone, at least understand the shit you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. I have to say that in my view, that kind of point of view is out and about in the world big time. And mostly what I see, particularly in this political season and in the run-up to, the voting and stuff in the midterms, is a whole lot of just... It was especially egregious here in New Mexico. The political ads, all the way down to things like county treasurer, county clerk. There was, I never once saw anybody take on their own platform and present it to me in a compelling way. All that I saw was both sides, every single person doing nothing but ad hominem attacks.
Well, also in politics, there's this notion of people who want to go in with good intentions, and then the conversation is like a race to the bottom, where it's just like, how dumb can we, get, and how reactionary can we get? And then if you're not reactionary, you like lose friends over it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, it's not only how reactionary, it's how mean, how evil we could be. There is right and wrong in the world.
Absolutely.
And it is like as though I know the difference, but I've got a hall pass on this because you represent a kind of thinking that is not mine. Yeah. I can't tell you how many posts I've seen even on Facebook that want to completely do away with one or the other of the political parties in this country, so that there's only one party.
Well, it's like a false tolerance too. There's another it's hilarious when you actually look at it. The people who talk about how tolerant they are, unless you have these views, then I'm not tolerant of you. So I'm not tolerant of that kind of intolerance. But as long as you don't have that kind of intolerance, I'm a super open and tolerant person. And it's always tolerant based off what your point of view about reality is. Then you're tolerant.
I have to say that when I was 18 years old, I was in a philosophy class at the university, and I walked around, and one of the big awakenings for me was about intolerance and how intolerant I was. And I decided that I could tolerate anything except intolerance. And it took me about 3 days to get it. And I remember I was walking to class and I just started laughing at myself, going, that's the epitome of the blind spot on tolerance.
Well, you're lucky you got, I don't know, maybe not lucky, but for whatever your wiring or circumstances, I mean, a lot of people don't get that when they're 18 or never get it at all.
Are you kidding? I've had conversations with 45 and 50-year-old people that are very, very intelligent, very well educated, very well read, but they have a particular political point of view and are absolutely intolerant of any, even the slightest breath of a countering a point of view or a questioning.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, from what I said earlier in the earlier conversation, the first thing that it jumps to is, if you disagree or you question, is that you are accused of being white privilege or anti-Semitic or some sort of ad hominem attack on you that has nothing to do with the question that's in front of you. It's just that people haven't learned the other side of the argument and are dead sure that they're sure that there is only one right way to think, and theirs is it.
Well, that's the sign of someone of low intelligence or not understanding what they're actually talking about, is when they have to use logical fallacies to make their point.
Yeah, well, it's just that it always shocks me because I actually assume people. I assume people to be more intelligent than they are.
Yeah, I think that's a problem we both have.
Yeah, I might. I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt, but then I get caught up every once in a while by people who, in their righteousness, somehow it's okay for them to point fingers at another person and call them racist, call them a fascist, compare them to Hitler. Unbelievable.
Yeah, we're in some interesting times.
Yeah.
So I'd like to tell us a little bit about what you've been working on recently.
Well, I've been working on bringing Aristotle into the 21st century.
What does that mean? That's a very bold statement to make. So what does that mean? I don't want to even go further because you were about to say more, and I'm like, dude, like you just said that. That's like me saying I'm rewriting Beatles music to evolve them. So like and then me talking about like different guitars. It's like, well, dude, stop talking about guitars. You just made some crazy claims. So you just talked about bringing Aristotle into the 21st century. So what's the deal? What is that?
Well,
I think that's super rad. That's a very big thing to claim.
I totally get it. I think that we've lost sight of the contribution that Aristotle was to us because we don't get taught him. And I've spent the last 2.5 years studying the writings of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, and I kind of landed on Aristotle as this guy was such a towering intellect that his thinking actually captured the imagination and was seminal thinking for over 2,000 years. And then we've lost track of him for the last 300 or 400 years, and other people have come in. But I've gone back and started reading him, and I'm interested in a progression that he suggests. And the progression is virtue. The progression from virtue is character, and the progression from character is destiny. See, if I work at it backwards, Eric, I believe that everybody has some sort of notion of destiny, and I think that we give up on it. We make a choice in life, and the choice is the choice between living a life that is meaningful or living a life that is actually organized around power.
Do you think that we're born with like a path or destiny? Like, do you think that's the thing that like we're born in it? No, okay.
No, but I do think that by the time you're 10 or 11 years old, you've had enough of the world put in front of you that you begin to kind of get a sense. I don't think it's really fully articulated, but you get a sense of destiny. You get a sense that maybe your life is about something, and that maybe that in your life you could use your life to make a difference somehow.
So how much of that is biological or spiritual, like is like just an innate essence, and how much of it do you think is upbringing, circumstances?
Well, I tend to lean towards nurture. We live in an age where it's a whole lot about nature, all of the genetic research and so on like that. But I think nurture has an awful lot to do with things. Yep. And I think that if you won the genetic, the genetic lottery,
yep,
which most people have at this point, and you're in a place that really nurtures fundamental things about human beings. Fundamental things are curiosity, the use of language, how we relate to things in terms of courage. So what Aristotle did is he put together something he called cardinal virtues. And the cardinal virtues, they're called cardinal. The word cardinal means hinge. So they're hinged to everything in your life. And 4 of the cardinal virtues are about meaning in your life, and 4 of the cardinal virtues are about power in your life. He calls them the moral virtues and the intellectual virtues. And I've never seen anybody put them together, but I decided that what I'd do is I would put them together and see what happened. And so I've started teaching the 4 cardinal virtues on the moral side, which give you meaning, and then the 4 intellectual virtues, and it seems to open things up for people.
Does this have application, do you see, in business?
I do, because you're always in the practice of some virtue. Well, if I say these are the virtues, you'll get why.
Can you give me an example? Sorry, go ahead.
Sure. The four moral virtues are courage, temperance, justice, and prudence, and then the 4 intellectual virtues are science, art, something like your intuition and wisdom. So all of those, if you practice wisdom, if you practice courage, when it's appropriate, if you practice prudence, if you practice justice, if you practice these 8 virtues, what you're doing is you're actually building yourself out as a well-rounded human being. The application to business is that you're training yourself to be a leader.
Can you give me a few American companies where you can see this being implemented or practiced, whether consciously or not?
Yeah, I can. And it's not like I always agree with the virtues, but there are people who are noted for their virtue. For example, Ben and Jerry. very quick, easy case of, they've pretty much used their company as a vehicle to practice civic virtue.
Okay.
Another case is Netflix. The way that they
work. Yeah, tell us a little bit more about.
Well, Netflix is an amazing company to work for.
Have you ever worked with Netflix?
I never have. Okay. I've only read about them and interviewed people, but I've never actually worked with them physically.
Because just from some of our private conversations, you've always had a lot of knowledge about Netflix. So you've interviewed people who work for Netflix.
Yeah, I have, and I follow them. Kind of like you follow certain stocks.
How do you know people from who work at Netflix in the first place? Like, how did those connections come about?
Mainly through just reading general circulation articles, which led me to periodicals that would lead me to people that would lead me to a phone call to talk to a person who was there.
Okay, interesting. So what are some of the things that you've learned about Netflix as applied to these Aristotle principles?
Justice is a big thing. For example, if you've read the work of Jonathan Haidt, I know you know him.
Yeah.
That's the kind of, he is kind of looked at it through the lens of 6 different virtues. But what happens at Netflix is that it seems like respect, dignity, honor, accountability, responsibility, integrity, just kind of like working with people at stage 4. That just seems to be the name of the game at Netflix. And they do it, and it works, and so since it's working, they do it more.
And explain the stage 4 nature. And just for people who aren't familiar with the cultural map and the cultural stages, explain stage 4 in as applied to Netflix. How about this? For the rest of the time on this show, if we could use Netflix as a case study, because that's a company everyone kind of knows in the news, to apply some of your work onto, if that's okay with you.
I will do it to the best of my ability. To the best
of your ability.
Yeah.
And how about this? Why don't we use, if you're comfortable with it, Sears obviously has been in the news recently. If you haven't heard,
ooh, yeah, well,
they've done a lot of things not good, right? So maybe we could talk a little bit about Sears as well, and maybe some things that they have or haven't
actually done. I think that's a good expression, and we can kind of put something in the middle. So on one side, let's have Netflix, and on the other side, let's have Sears. Mm-hmm. And in the middle, let's have a conversation that is really beginning to evolve called blockchain.
Okay.
So the idea is Sears is like, it actually is like and was organized like the army. Or it was organized like, you could say it's like Russia. It was highly centralized. It was good for its time. They had their market, but they never really moved with the technology of the times. And what happened is it was too slow, too stodgy. They were unable to actually serve the customer effectively. And it was too hard to do business with Sears, and too much really effective competition in every niche that Sears tried to take. So, if you want clothes, you can get better clothes cheaper somewhere else. If you want bedroom stuff, you can get better stuff cheaper somewhere else. They did have a great warranty if you wanted to buy your washer, dryer, your refrigerator, whatever else like that, and it didn't work, they would instantly give you the money back or trade it in. So they had good policies to a certain degree, but they didn't move. They were like a monolith. They moved very, very slowly, and they seemed to be, I don't know this for a fact, but they seemed to be kind of self-satisfied. Like we're an American icon, and we will always be here.
Well, what's your view on when Eddie Lampert took it over and ran it for, what was it, like 13 years or something like that? I mean, do you think he screwed up, or do you think there was just really nothing he could do at that point?
No, I think that Sears was a business idea whose time had come and gone, and they did not alter the idea for the next part of the time that was coming. They were unable to do that. They had a winner, and they just kept riding the winner until the winner died.
Huh.
But on the other hand, Netflix is getting instant feedback from the customers because it's a digital company. B, it is giving you essentially one product, which is access to broadcast content, and you can order it up as fast as you want to. It's cheap. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to leave the comfort of your own home, and you will be entertained, and you feel like you will get value for money with it.
What makes them a stage 4 business?
It's kind of, one thing is it's distributed, which is the blockchain concept. For another thing,
what does blockchain and Netflix have to do with each other? Like, you just threw in blockchain there.
Yeah, blockchain has to do with the concept of distributed distributed areas of business, areas of that all can kind of work together, but they're all independent.
So how does Netflix do that?
Well, it seems like what they do is they hire competent people, and those people run the thing, and there's just not like a heavy-handed central hand of management for them. It seems like they have a big commitment to the people who work for them, because you don't hear about business turnover with Netflix. I would say that their turnover rate is fairly low.
You mean like employee turnover?
Employee turnover, yeah.
That's I wonder what the number would be on that, actually.
I don't know what the number is, but
probably low.
It's probably low, and because people like working for them. There's something jazzy about it. Sears is not really an interesting place to go to work.
Yeah.
So but
I don't think the point of Sears was to make it interesting, right? I mean,
No. The point of Sears was to get stuff out of a warehouse.
I mean, like Aldi. You walk. Have you ever been into an Aldi before?
Into a what?
Aldi.
No.
Oh, it's like the sister company of Trader Joe's. It's actually the brother. It's two brothers, and one runs Trader Joe's and one runs Aldi. In the United States, and in Europe, there's Trader Joe's is also called Aldi, and it's like Aldi East and Aldi West, I think. But if you walk into Aldi, it's disgusting. But it's not meant to look nice. Everything's super super cheap, like even cheaper than Trader Joe's. There's no shelving. It's literally like the carton just gets plopped in the warehouse. There's maybe like two people working there at any one time. You have to stick a quarter in the shopping cart to take it out.
Wow.
And then and then once you're done with the shopping cart, you can get your quarter back. So you're putting the shopping carts away versus an employee doing it. Yeah. And they don't have any bags or boxes. Like you have to either pay 10 cents a bag or you bring your own stuff. So it's very low key, but they keep the cost down by doing it. Or Costco, Costco is another one of these places where
Costco is a model that works very well.
So we were talking about Trupanion earlier, and Trupanion is actually very influenced by Costco, actually.
Oh, really?
And the Costco CFO spoke at the annual meeting, I think this past year or 2 years ago. Costco has a very interesting model, right?
They do.
Where, Are you saying that as a statement or like a question?
No, I know this for a fact. I actually worked with. He was a coaching client, the son of one of the three founders of Costco.
Right. Oh wow.
Yeah.
Who?
His name is Meisenbach.
Huh. That was so you worked with the son of one of the founders.
I worked with the son. He was in real estate.
And what kind of work were you doing with the son?
I was coaching his son because his son was out of control.
Oh, okay. We probably shouldn't go into detail on that.
No, you shouldn't. It didn't work. It was I failed at being effective at coaching this guy.
Okay. I think that's all we need to know. I just want to respect the privacy of anything else. So,
exactly.
But Costco's an interesting model where, right? I mean, they could technically, if they wanted to, just raise their prices, but they've chosen to to pass on those savings to the consumer. And you just build up this incredible brand, loyalty. And then on top of that, you get the membership, right? So you get that upfront payment, which then you lower your costs even more. Their business model is incredible. So Charlie Munger is on the board at Costco. I don't know if you know that.
Oh, really? I did not know that, but I'll tell you, I would pick. I personally would pick and watch anything that Charlie Munger is interested in or on the board of, for sure.
Interesting. When I was at the Daily Journal meeting this year on Valentine's Day, and Charlie, who runs that, as well as being the vice chairman of Berkshire, he was talking about, he's like, yeah, I only own, the only investments that I have are Costco, Berkshire Hathaway, and then, this Chinese hedge fund that he owns a piece of. But that's it. And Daily Journal, obviously. And he loves talking about Costco. It's very funny, actually.
Well, they are great.
You got to connect with Charlie.
I guess I got it.
You really do.
I guess I got it because I have so much admiration for the guy. Through you, by the way, you. Because I really didn't know who he was. I was not in that world.
Yeah, you gotta come to. I don't know if I'll be able to make the Daily Journal meeting this year, but it's in LA. You should go regardless if I'm there or not. Yeah. And or even just write him a letter or give him a call or something. Because I'll tell you, when I spoke to him and I told him a little bit about you, he probably won't remember the conversation. It was several years ago. I want to say it was 2012 or 2013 when I spoke to him. But I told him about you. He said he would love to meet you. So
well, that's wow, how gracious! I'll tell you, you got a lot when you got a guy like you on my side. So thank you very much, Eric.
Hey, I feel like likewise, but even more so on you on my side. So the feeling is mutual.
Well, yeah. So thank you. Yes, and the feeling is mutual. So,
hurry up. He's 94. He doesn't eat very healthy either. He's not going to stop eating his sodas and Sears candies anytime soon. So he's made it this far despite his horrible eating habits. So
bless his heart. He's a good one.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking from so stage 4. Let me just go back and say a little bit about
stage 4, and if you could talk about it in the context of either Netflix or Sears or both.
Yeah, well, Sears I can't. Sears is a stage 1, stage 2, actually stage 2 and stage 3 company.
I'm gonna say not stage 1, my friend.
No,
you should know better.
I wouldn't say
you invented it.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that. So, but 2 and 3 for sure is running the show, suffering from great lack of leadership. One of the things that is actually a hallmark that divides out stage 3, 2, and 3 from stage 4 is it a management-driven company or is it a leadership-led company?
Question, though. If they had actually moved to a stage 4 culture, do you think it still would have been hopeless at that point? If Eddie came in and understood tribal leadership and says, oh, we're going to create stage 4, we're going to try the fuck out of our company, you think it would have had any hope or still a lost cause?
I am sorry to say that I don't think so. I think that things are so in the culture of that company that it would be a major This is like Drain the Swamp. They got their own deep state at Sears. People have been there for 40 years, and their cousins are there and their sisters there, and they only know how to do it the way they're doing it, and they're not organized around fresh, new thinking and any fresh new thinking that comes in. And I know they've tried to bring it in a number of times, has been met with a lot of resistance. It's the thing that Drucker said, over and over again when he said that culture eats strategy for breakfast every day. And Sears is one of those cases that has just eaten up dozens of really good strategies in the last 10 or 15 years.
Attributed to him. He never actually said it.
Attributed. Attributed's close enough for me.
Yeah, it's just the thing, it's like I've changed up the way that I present that because I was doing a research paper, which I quoted you in because I interviewed you for it, and I wanted to use that quote and I wanted to cite my source. So I had to find a place where he actually said it. Right? This was like my journey into the myth of Drucker. And as I'm Googling a source of where he actually said it, so I could put it as a citation, I discovered he never actually said it, but everyone says that he says it. So no one knows actually where it comes from. It just became like a meme in the business community. But we all just say it attributed to Drucker. So.
Well, attributed to, yeah. Well, I'll take it as an
Hey, you're a smart guy when people start quoting awesome shit that you never actually said.
Well, yeah, I can think of
right. You can dig that, right?
There's one out there that is attributed to Mark Twain, which is it isn't what you know that gets you in trouble; it's what you don't know that you think is so that gets you in trouble.
Whoa! I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that it was not Mark Twain that said that.
It's attributed.
Damn it! Well, that quote has not gotten me into trouble yet, but if it was going to, now I've avoided that.
Lying there like a snake in the grass, ready to bite you.
On that note, stage 4, keep going.
Stage 4. So
I'm on my second glass of wine. This is like very entertaining, and I'm just like,
well,
I feel like I'm like listening to the show. I'm forgetting I'm hosting it actually.
Well,
you're very entertaining.
Well, you're doing a great job
because you're the king of LA. Keep going.
The
kings are entertaining. A good king, as they say, you know what they say, right? A good king does not need a jester.
A good king does not need a jester?
A jester only adds to the kingdom.
The only one I knew was once a king, always a king, but once a knight's enough. So
okay, stage 4.
Stage 4. Collaborative, cooperative, autonomous, people standing on their own 2 feet, making their own decisions, consciously in relationship with each other and having the interest of others as paramount in their mind, playing a full out in a non-zero sum game in which everybody wins or everybody loses together, but by God, we're going to do it all together. And we're going for something that's bigger than us. That's stage 4.
Don't you get when you say that statement right there, right?
Yeah.
For the person who's never heard that, right, ever, in terms of like never actually done that work, it's easy to hear that as, oh, you're just another one of these like motivational dudes talking about teamwork and collaboration. I've already heard that. How are you different? If you have a CEO and he wants to pay you $1 million and he goes, John, how are you different? How are you not one of these other schmucks telling us to collaborate? Because we've been trying team building for years and it doesn't work. So why are you different? Yeah. We know to collaborate.
Well,
we know that already, right? So,
well, for one thing, you're right. The teamwork.
I know
team
that some of our listeners just had that thought. That's why I'm saying it.
Yeah. Well, first of all, team building does not work. It is one of the 2 areas that are the biggest ripoffs in the business training.
No, but but John, you understand when you say that. It can be collapsed as though you're just advocating for team building.
Yeah, I'm not.
Right.
But yes.
But I wanted to point it out, because if I didn't point it out, I just didn't want that to be in the background.
No, okay. So we're pointing out that it's not about team building, and yet, first of all, we got a long way to go before we could get ourselves up to team. We have to learn how to partner. And it has not been my experience that people are good at partnering.
Especially in the United States, or is it just everywhere?
No, it's more in the U.S.
Yeah.
We're so competitive. We're so competitive that it's all about me being better than you, smarter than you, stronger than you, something than you. And it's about you trying to do that with me. And we're just, as individuals, it's a personal thing for me to actually impose my personal will on you. That's what stage 3 is about. It's about I'm great, you're not. And stage 2 is about, oh, man, I'm the loser in this one. I don't trust anybody, but this is a bummer and my life sucks. So that's most people when they go to work, they are in one of those two characters and they toggle back and forth from my life sucks to I'm great, you're not. Depending on their day.
So this actually made me think of Sears for a second, because one of the things that was written about Eddie Lampert was that when he was running Sears, one of the tactics that he used is that he set up the he set up the departments essentially where he's very he was very inspired by Ayn Rand, and he wanted and he's very open about that.
Well, it's the height of individuality, that's for sure.
Right. So he set up Sears in a way where he got like different divisions to compete with each other, thinking that it would, by the different divisions competing with each other, it would lift everyone's performance up. I think that was the general thesis.
Well, it should have worked, and it often does work. So getting different divisions, or at least departments, to compete with each other is actually a virtuous practice. That's a good thing to do.
However, question. I've obviously never worked for Sears or been in there, so I don't know. But one of the things I had always thought about is, well, is this going to create an incentive system for people to start undermining each other? And you're essentially creating, one division stage 3, the other division stage 2, and then it goes kind of back and forth with a winner and loser.
Well, it really depends on what are we competing for. If you're in life and what you're competing for is just to defeat me, then after a while, your defeating me, if you do, is a fairly hollow victory. But if what you're doing is that in the process of defeating me, you are causing something like you've solved the issue of hunger in the world, or you've actually made a dent into something that is in the fabric of your culture that made a difference, then that's all the difference in the world. Sears is not about that. Sears is plop the store down here, hire people, give them a minimum of training, and tell them that you're going to pay them way less than would make them happy, even though it allows your company to work. But they're not doing anything but going to work. It's like the difference between having a job and having a calling.
Right.
People at Netflix, people at Apple, when Steve Jobs was around, they came to it as though it was a calling. People at Sears...
Still to an extent, though, right? You with Tim Cook, he's been pretty effective.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's been very effective.
I'm generally very pleased with the employees at the Apple Store. Like they're cultists.
Yeah, well, for one thing, they're working at the sexiest store in town in retail.
That's true.
And it's like, okay, so I'm working at Apple. Where are you working? You're working at Verizon. Okay, I'm great. You're not.
Would you say Apple's a stage 4 company?
What I'm saying is what got them going is that they were actually working to make a difference and did it several times over.
Right.
Listen, back in the 60s, the entire country produced the man on the moon. It wasn't John Kennedy. And back 15 years ago, when the first iPhone came out, the entire company benefited from the iPhone coming out. It was like, this is something that is going to change history, and it did. And so the thing at Apple is you're working on things that are beautifully, beautifully designed, and the company itself is putting out products and thinking in a way that will change history. Same thing's true with Google. You can work for Google, but I'll tell you, you can always reference, I work for Google, as though you're working for the team that's doing the moonshots, because that's the amazing part of Google. You can work for Tesla and you can be putting brakes on the car, but you're working for a company that is changing the culture, and for a man who is changing the culture of thinking in the 21st century in terms of leadership. Mm-hmm. So the question is, what is the future you're living into? Aristotle said that a composite of your virtues, an aggregation of your virtues will form your character. And from your character, your destiny will unfold. So Apple was doing virtuous, high-tech coding, all of that sort of software work, but the vision that they were living into was the vision of changing history. And they did it several times. They brought out the first little kind of desktop deal, and then they went on from there, and then the telephone. And it's one after another thing, and they're beautiful and cool looking as well. So if you're around this, you're proud of who you work for, and you're proud of the future that they've delivered so far, and you want to be part of the future that they're going to deliver. That's a leadership construct. Sears, not so much.
You've clearly had experience with bringing companies to stabilize at stage 4. Uh-huh. I mean, is it pretty difficult in your experience to do that?
Yeah. It is, but I think that's because of my kind of insufficiencies. I'm getting better at it. I'm getting faster at it. I'm getting better at it. I'm getting better at getting.
This is why you should meet Charlie Munger. It's like you both are too humble for your own good. It's ridiculous.
Well, no, it's the truth. I will tell you that I came up with the concept of stage 3 to stage 4 and stage 2 and triads and all of that. I came up with the idea 18 years ago. I'm just now beginning to get to the point where I can explain it in a way that somebody else can walk away and say, I can do that, and then does do it. Because it's not hard, but it is about your willingness to give up something about your notion of yourself as an individual.
Dear God, you really are too humble for your own good sometimes. This guy's like John's a master at this stuff, and he's talking about. But you know what though? That's why you're always growing, because you're always looking for like, where am I inadequate, or where's the next gap, where's the next space for me to move through.
I had a funny experience 2 weeks ago, Eric. I was at the University of Arizona, and I was teaching at something called the Southwest Leadership Program. I've been going there for years, and I teach. I only have a half-day session, and I'm dealing with people who are very pragmatic. Generally, there's 40 or 50 people in the room. Generally, half of them are police officials or firefighters or fire officials, or people who are kind of middling officials in the management of the running of the county. And so these are kind of a tough nut. And so I came in and I did my half-day speech with them, but what I didn't realize, which was about communication, and it was about the cultural map and the structural map. It was based 3 of the 4 tools that I like to teach about. And when I finished, we got through this, and when I finished, I went to the back of the room to ask them how much time I have left, and they said, "Oh, you got 38 minutes left." And I went, "Oh, really?" So I went back up and I started teaching this stuff that I've been thinking about in terms of our Aristotelian virtues and how that interacts with the Tao and yin and yang and all of these models that I've been working on lately. And then later on, I thought, how in the world did I get finished 38 minutes early? And I realized I was teaching them off of the slide deck that I'd been using in Uzbekistan, where I had been simultaneously translated into Russian. And 38 minutes was what got added onto my time when I did it over there. So it's
interesting.
And then I came over here and I went, wow, I'm really going fast here. And it was just because I was speaking in my native language and they were actually understanding it instead of having to translate it into Russian.
Huh.
It's an interesting thing to tell fairy tales, to make a point. One of the fairy tales I tell is it's the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. And what you learn from that is Goldilocks, who is you, goes out into the deep, dark forest, which is the world, the scary world and the scary marketplace, sees a house that looks like a safe house. She goes inside. And first thing she sees is 3 chairs. One's too big, one's too large, one is just right. And we now, in this instant, we get introduced to the idea of the golden mean, where it is about too little, and then too much, and then just right. And so she went through that, and we saw she had food that was too hot, too cold, just right. She slept on a bed that was too hot, too cold, just right. But I'm telling this story in Russian. Turns out, by the way, they have that story. They don't have it as Goldilocks. They have another character, but they got the story. But it allowed me to tell the story of too little, too much, just right, so that you could get the idea of what a virtue is. Because the virtue is the just right thing. Too little or too much is a vice. So courage, for example, which is the very first virtue, and it governs everything that you do physically in your life. Too little is cowardice, and too much of that is recklessness. But just right, at the very tip of the best part of what's right, is the virtue called courage. Now, when you take a courage...
Hold on just one second. You think that cowardice is a vice?
Yeah, it is.
Huh. How so?
It's a detriment.
Okay.
It's a detrimental state.
I guess we always talk... I always hear vice in the context of too much. Like, what are your vices?
No, it's either too little or too much.
Huh. Like, people say, oh, my junk food's my vice, or, eating chips is my vice. People typically talk about it as an excessive thing.
In that case, you'd have to say too little healthy food, too much junk food.
Okay.
But what we're looking for is the virtue is the golden mean. Right. The golden mean is the virtue, which is the best part. The word virtue means excellence. So the most excellent part. So if you take a number of these virtues and you accrete them together, aggregate them together, what they tend to form is your character. So your character is, in the Aristotelian world, your character is being formed by 8 fundamental virtues and then dozens of others that come off of that. But the 8 virtues are courage and then temperance. Temperance is your ability to manage your mind, your mental state. Too little of it is apathy. Too much of it is hysteria. Just the proper part of your being able to manage your own moods and emotions and so on like that is called temperance. Justice is really around fairness.
So that's why people get like a cringe when they listen to Alex Jones.
Oh, God, yes.
Because it's
way over the top.
Right.
Way over.
Even if he's saying something that's smart, it's hard to hear him.
It was one of those ones, if he could dial it back about, 400 yards.
That's interesting.
You might have something. But yeah, no.
But then on the opposite, right? But then there's the other people where it's almost like I've met some people that they're so reserved in what they're saying, so calculated in what they're saying, it's almost uncomfortable in the opposite.
Exactly. Way. Yeah, too little is apathy. Apathy is no emotion at all.
Yeah, like you say something and there's just like no response for like a minute.
Exactly.
It's like, what the fuck? Like,
yeah, that's called a flat affect. They have a flat affect. Nothing actually affects them.
I would see. I have a different take on that. I see it as their flat affect is something is affecting them.
Oh no, it's affecting them, but a flat affect is actually the state of apathy, which is no emotional response.
It's like makes me very uncomfortable. Like there's a part of me that feels very uncomfortable with that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But a temperate person, they have emotions, but they manage them.
Well, I would say you're a temperate person, John.
It's a virtue I work on.
Huh. Well, where would you say you work on being less over the top or more?
No,
Or you're too reserved.
No, I have to dial back my inner Alex Jones.
I've never seen you. I mean, I've never seen John as Alex Jones. I don't know if I want to see
well,
that.
the thing is that I can get very hard-headed and extreme, and it's not so much Alex Jones, but let's take a look at a guy like Cory Booker.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, he can be wrong as can be, and he will just double down.
Yeah, I was gonna say he won't admit it if he's wrong.
Yeah, absolutely, he'll just double down. And back in the early days of John, I was definitely the guy that would double down rather than admit, that I was wrong or incorrect.
No. When you were a mere prince.
When I was a mere prince, yes, exactly.
What?
But I had quite a temper, and
you were a prince of an inferior city too.
Of L.A.
Well,
inferior to who? Inferior
to L.A. What's in Fresno?
To Fresno.
Prince of Fresno.
I was the Prince of Fresno.
I don't know. To me, that's an inferior city to L.A.
I got it. Well, I don't know. I don't know. We got
everything that's ever come out of Fresno.
What's the name of that guy who is the military historian? He wrote Mexifornia. Victor Davis Hanson Davis. Victor Davis Hanson.
What is it? Mexifornia?
Yeah, he wrote a book. About 20 years ago, he wrote a book called Mexifornia about
Mexifornia, State of Becoming. Victor Davis Hanson.
Victor Davis Hanson. He's from Fresno.
Okay.
And Cher, the singer.
Yes.
Sonny and Cher.
I don't have high regard for her though.
Yeah, well, that's because you have a different political point of view.
No, nothing. I have a thing for like. I don't like divas.
Oh,
but not like diva in like the. I don't know if you were in show business, so maybe diva has a different word for you. Diva has like a negative connotation to me. I say it in like a negative way.
Yeah, I never got her as a diva. I got her as a really funny, intelligent, smart ass with a lot of talent.
Well, maybe.
And I worked with her a number of times. And I was always
better than I am. See, I'm not going to double down here.
Yeah, I was impressed by her. I was always impressed by her.
But see, like I like on the surface. Obviously, this is just on the surface. But like on the surface, I think Madonna's pretty rad. Like I would say she's like a diva in like the best.
Well,
way.
yeah. Well, definitely.
Or Lady Gaga. I love Lady Gaga.
Lady Gaga. Have you seen her in this movie, Stars?
I haven't.
I
should.
God. Yeah, not only should you go see Lady Gaga, but she's the second best thing in the movie. Bradley Cooper is stunning.
You know who also
wrote it? He directed it. He put the whole thing together. He sang his own song.
Okay.
And in addition to that, and he made her look great.
Oh, rad. You know who else I respect a lot as well is do you know the artist Elle King?
Yes.
So she's Rob Schneider's daughter. I don't know if you know that.
She's who? Rob Schneider's daughter?
Yeah.
I did not know that. She is. What an amazing and unusual talent.
Yeah. So I was friends with her back in summer camp, and it's actually very, very funny. I have I had I played music and stuff, and I still play music, but I had an album that I was selling in summer camp, and I had a list of my CD sales. I had a list. I found it a couple months ago, and not only was Elle King, with her phone number, street address, and signature now, right, on the order form, but there was aside from her, there was 3 other now celebrities on that. How about that? On that list. Oh, I'm not going to say their names, but she's. I probably haven't. I haven't spoken to her in a few years. We had a brief Facebook chat quite a few years ago. That was it. But she's amazing, and I can attest to this personally that the we called her Ellie Schneider, but the Elle King that you see now doing cool stuff, exactly the same person as she was.
Yeah, I believe it.
I would play ping pong with her or something.
I think this is one of those people that figured out who they were at a really young age, and they just developed it.
Yeah, Mike. So I went to the summer camp that I went to was called Bucks Rock, and if you want to get a camp where you discover yourself, that's a place to do it. That place is the word people use at that camp is magical. Like there's, there's something magical about that place.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, what a privilege in life to actually have that experience.
Yes, well, super grateful for my folks.
Yeah.
Because I didn't pay for that one myself.
Well, your parents did a pretty great job of raising you and your brother, that's for sure.
Well, yes, couldn't agree more with that. Yeah. What else? Any we were talking about being virtuous.
Well, I guess that's really kind of my message is virtue forms character, character unfolds destiny. That's my little meme.
I like that, and I like that you actually distinguish character, right? Because I feel like character is one of those things, like culture, where people kind of like they know the flavor and they know it when they see it, but it's hard to break it down.
Okay, I'm going to give it to you in an easy way. Okay, so virtue actually means excellence.
Right, we're saying that.
So virtue forms character. Character is actually your inner greatness.
Okay.
So virtue forms character, which means excellence forms greatness, and virtue forms character, and that unfolds destiny, which means excellence forms greatness, which unfolds possibility.
What do you do to? That's very cool. What do you do to teach this so it's not just like okay, that's interesting kind of thing? Where do you?
Well, I don't know.
Teach? Okay,
I've actually only rolled it out. I rolled it out in that class where I had 38 minutes.
Okay.
Left, and all I saw was people looking down and taking notes, and my daughter was in the room, and she came up to me and she said, I've heard almost everything that you said, but I did take 4 pages of notes. And when I looked at her notes, the notes were all about virtue and character and destiny. So I'm interested in this just like you are. We're both kind of have a more than just an amateurish interest in unfolding possibility for ourselves and for people around us. And so I'm trying to get at, okay, how can we get people effectively into action to be unfolding possibility? How can we get them to actually operate inside of their virtues, which is those little points of excellence that we are, by the way, that other people can look at you and say that, so that it fed and nurtured your inner greatness, which is your character, and which forms your ethos, and then that unfolded your destiny, which is the possibility that you are standing for as a human being.
Yeah, I think the challenge is having that get in with people so it's not a bumper sticker.
Yeah, well, it also has to do with reacquainting them with something.
Right.
See, my point of view is everybody had a sense of destiny, and then most people let it go because they got married or they got a job or they've got bills, or they've got the mortgage or whatever else, and it's become very low flame, like a pilot light, and so we have to kind of open up people to their sense of destiny. Once you've actually get that, oh my God, I sold out on my sense of destiny, and in this conversation, I could recover a sense of destiny.
You know, it's a good tool that I find extremely useful, especially for people who've sold out on their destiny, is, are you familiar with Mel Robbins and her 5-second rule?
Yes, I am. Only vaguely, but I mean, I've heard it and I went, yeah, that's like, duh.
Okay, so it's an interesting story. The way that I've said it, and just because it's been my experience, is the more you fall... I've had some experiences in life where it was like too many coincidences. It almost felt like some weird divine shit, like an out-of-this-world experience. And it's happened a few times in my life where someone comes into your life, or for some people it's a place, right? They need to go to this place, and if I go to this place, I'm going to discover something. I don't know what it... And they sound fucking crazy, but like they just know, right? And you there?
Yeah.
And I've always thought there's something to it because I've seen how accurate it is when people have that deep knowing, and how typically we're in an environment where that's justified away or dismissed. And the more... I'm under the view that the more that you follow that, the stronger that like spidey sense intuition becomes.
Okay, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to get ready to be validated. Yeah, I'm stopping you here so you can tell your story, but I want to give you a little piece of information.
Sure.
Okay, so one of the hinge virtues that is in the area of the intellectual virtues is something called nous, spelled N-O-U-S. And N-O-U-S is a Greek word which means mind, but the real translation on it is intuition. It's a virtue.
No, you mentioned that before. That's what I kind of sparked that. So the way that I've just from my own intuition, seeing how it works, the more I follow it, the stronger it gets.
Yep.
But on the opposite hand, and I think this is even a faster downward spiral. So this is actually easier. It's kind of like it's easier to get fat than it is to get six-pack abs.
Yep.
Right? You have to put a ton of work in to get in shape. I had abs for about 3 weeks and lost them. It took a lot to maintain it. And I've been fat twice in my life. And it was way easier for me to get fat than it was to get in really good shape. It's a lot easier, from what I've noticed. It's easier to be disconnected from your intuition than it is to grow your intuition. Because if you want to grow your intuition, you can tell me if I'm wrong. I just want to finish my point.
Okay.
But if you want to grow your intuition, you have to constantly be following that, and that often means that you're following it in an environment or with family, friends who are either going to think you're nuts or who are just not going to get it because if you've disconnected from your intuition, you might feel threatened by someone that's following it and think that they're being stupid or something, which they might be being stupid. That's a different debate. But then on the flip side, if you disconnect from it and you justify it away and then you stick to those justifications and excuses of why you've done it, and you're going to get societal agreement instantly because that's the predominant view in the culture, now you're exponentially going to spiral downward towards being disconnected from your intuition, and you do that for 10 years and you can't even experience it anymore. It's like it's such a distant thing that to rediscover it again, it's going to take a shit ton of effort.
Yeah. Well, yes.
And if you tell me if I'm wrong, please.
No, I'm not telling you that you're wrong, but I will say that at a certain risk, I will say that women are better at it than men.
No, they are better at it than men. That's 100%.
but in either case, women or men, it gets tied to another virtue. So nous does not stand alone. It stands with two other virtues. One of them is Sophia, which is wisdom. So your intuition actually needs to go through a wisdom filter of some kind. And then it also is, in terms of your acting, it's tied to time. If you are a person who makes snap judgments that goes bad, then you are what they call incontinent. If you are a person who takes too long to make a bad decision or choice, you are continent. But those are both the vices that are on the other side, the too little and the too much, that's on the other side of something called prudence. The virtue is prudence. Prudence is excellence in managing the appropriate amount of time to make effective decisions or choices. Tie that to your intuition, which usually sparks prudence.
Yes.
And having that virtue, so that's one virtue. So you got the virtue of prudence, you got the virtue of nous or intuition, tied to and kind of really being coached or mentored by wisdom.
You know what plays into that too? It's something that Tony Robbins says, where he talks about how people generally, and he's obviously coached a ton of people in his life, right?
Oh my, yeah,
so
he's amazing.
He probably knows a thing or two about this, but
he knows a thing or two about this.
So he says in his experience, he finds that people generally will overestimate what they can do in a year, but they will underestimate significantly what they could do in 10 years.
Oh, he's absolutely right about that.
Right?
There's all kinds of data on that.
Right. So the assertion you can make from that is there's a lot of people where they have this intuition, this knowing of something they need to follow, and now they're a year and a half, 2 years in, they don't see much progress, and they go, oh shit, I'm an idiot. And you know who says this a different way, which I like, is Guy Spear, who runs Aquamarine Capital. Yeah, very talented investor. Also someone that you would love. He's actually big into Tony Robbins, and he talks about it in his book. But if you ever come into the Berkshire Hathaway meeting, he's always there. I'd love to introduce you to him. Amazing guy.
Well, those are very.
And
I mean, you just take a look at the Charlie Munger. You take a look at Warren Buffett. That is a virtuous partnership, and where they are very careful to not have too little or too much, but just the right amount involved, and it's all comes together to form something that is the character of Berkshire Hathaway.
Well, it's funny, and I'm going to continue what I said in a second, but on a side point, Buffett said fairly recently he was talking about, they love talking about their decentralized culture. And he was talking about this one guy, and he's like, he's a very, very talented CEO. I haven't met with him in 10 years. I met with him once, though, in 10 years. And you know what? It probably wasn't a good thing. He'd probably be doing better if it wasn't for me talking to him in the last 10 years.
Yeah, that's very good. It's very good. By the way, just once again got taken off of they're so proud of their decentralized culture, which is the wave of the future, which is really the essence of what blockchain is.
Yeah, and I want to get to that in a minute. That's a good segue. What were we talking about?
You were telling the story, and let's see what.
With Tony Robbins. Guy Spear. So Guy Spear has
right.
Guy Spear. He gave you ever watch Google Talks? They're kind of like TED Talks, but for Google.
I think I've seen one or two.
Okay, but it's not like a TEDx Google. It's like its own thing.
Maybe not then. Maybe not.
I don't think TED does Google. I think it's a. But my brother works for Johnson & Johnson. They had a TEDx J&J, but it's private. You can't watch it anywhere. But Google Talks are public, or at least the ones they want you to see, at least. I don't think they're all public, but I might be wrong about that. But anyway, so Guy gave a talk at Google few years ago, and he talked about something which was like he said something that happened to be an experience of mine, but he put words to it, and it plays along to this, that you can do a lot more in 10 years than you think, but you might be a little overconfident what you can do in a year. Uh-huh. And he makes the analogy, but it's not really an analogy. It's really a thing where he talks about it in terms of compound interest. And when you look at a compound interest graph, right, and it's kind of, you don't see much growth for a while and kind of stagnant, and then all of a sudden it shoots up, right? But that thing's been growing at 10%, 11% a year. Yeah. It just, you don't notice it, but then by year 60, by year 70, it's insane how fast something is growing, right? And Albert Einstein called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world.
Yeah.
So Guy Spear talks about accomplishment in networking in the same way, where it's like when you first start off, it's very difficult if you're in it to see the result, and it looks like you're putting all this work. And he uses an example where he talks about, he likes to write letters to people. He loves writing letters and giving thank you notes and all that, right? He's very into that. Mm-hmm. So, he's writing all these letters and putting all this effort in. And the first few years, it almost seems like it's like a wasted effort. Like he's putting so much energy into these relationships, and he's not seeing the results and the fruits of these relationships. But then he talks about how as time went on, there was this like exponential growth into what those actions would accomplish, and it was because you don't see the compounding those first few years. It's on a small social base, if you will, or a small success base. And it was only a few years ago for me where I noticed that I was putting in the same amount of effort, but that effort was creating significantly larger results. And then I look back and go, oh, well, that's kind of how it happened. And I think if people took on that view, you wouldn't feel so shitty putting in so much effort into your life, into your relationships, because you can come from it and say, okay, well, the first few years I may not notice anything, but that doesn't mean it's not working. That's
exactly right.
But that's a tough thing for people to get, because
it is. Well, it's a tough thing for Americans to get.
Yes, very much so.
It's a tough thing for people who have never ever had to face deferred gratification.
Right? And Charlie Munger talks about deferred gratification all the time.
Well, it's one of the 2 or 3 top predictors of success.
Yes, and do you know the study of the marshmallow?
Yeah, the Stanford study. Yeah,
the guy just died.
Yeah.
So I had a friend of mine who actually has been on the show, Whitney Tilson. He was just on in the summer, and he's another one of these guys, like very, very generous. Like, I wrote to him when I was in high school, and he wrote back to me, and I've known him ever since. And but he's always been very supportive to me, and he didn't have to be. Is all I'm saying. But he actually is one of the kids in the study, and to this day he doesn't know if he ate the marshmallow because the guy would never tell him. Oh
my God, that's great. That is great.
And then he died. He'll never know.
Yeah, and then he died. You'll never know. Yeah. There's a very, very classic. As a matter of fact, that particular little experiment is so classic that they run them often in team building programs.
But you don't like team building.
No, I don't. Well, I don't like it because generally the way that it's put together is inside of shall we say, the distinction of positive mental attitude. And so it has a kind of a rah-rah quality to it that doesn't get down to the level of greatness that you are. That is what I would call your character.
Yeah, I think it tarnishes the work. I mean, not tarnishes, but it gets in the way. It's like
it does. It does
because that's sort of like the loudest shit, and it's
it puts false notions in as to what's at the see. The thing about team is, at the heart of team, if you don't have partners, you don't have a team.
Right.
So at the heart of team is partnership.
There's this really smart guy named John King who says structure never lies.
Structure never lies. Not really. So the thing is, but partner and the partner. So the way that you decline the verb partner is, there's partner, like you and me, we're there, we're willing. Then there's partnering, we're kind of half-assed doing it. Or there's something where we both give something up and surrender into something that's bigger than both of us, called a partnership. And until that's happened a number of times with people, you don't have a shot in hell of producing team. You can do a little project where you can get a little teamwork going, and we win the race or something like that. But in the long run, until you are actually addressing the conversations that exist in people's heart around their ability to trust themselves, trust other people, be involved with other people. In other words, conversations that are virtuous, and they are right at the heart of where your character is formed. And you're asking the question, who am I? Who are my partners? What are we building? Who do we touch? What difference does it make? Asking questions like that. There's none of that goes on in the general team building kind of programs. And unless that's going on, you have no prayer whatsoever of really forming a team.
Well, there's no deferred gratification. I mean, that's the other thing too. Is like, exactly right. I can't even imagine, and I don't even. I feel like at this point, it probably won't even annoy you. It's just probably something you're just used to. But I can't even imagine how many executives you've spoken to who, like, there was some piqued interest in what you did, and then they want to learn your technique, right? Or they want to learn, like, the thing.
Mostly they want to get the silver bullet.
Right, yeah. Teach me that thing, and then I'll be on my merry way. And it's like, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, I get that a lot over here. I don't get that over there. I don't get that in people who go into their career and they realize that this career is the hopes and dreams of their parents and their grandparents, and it's about building a world for their children and grandchildren, and they are conscious of that, and they are deeply and profoundly conscious of that. And when they become aware that the other people in the room have that same condition, that same environment, that same ecology, they suddenly start to get real good at stage 4, working together in order to do something that is bigger than them.
It's magical. That's what it is.
It is. You start to see individual people's character start to partner with other people's character in order to unfold a new destiny.
And you know what? Those people, they must go back, when they go back to their lives, they must get extra nauseated at, like, their company's, like, team meeting, quote unquote team. Yeah. It's, like, disgusting. Yeah. The vast majority of team meetings that I've gone to and having this background made me want to puke, quite frankly.
Yeah, well, it's just, it's a rah-rah. At best, it's a rah-rah kind of delivery. And that's why I don't like it, because it's setting you up to believe
it's so that if stupid.
But it's setting up everybody in a belief structure, and the belief structure is, as long as we're really enthusiastic about this, we'll have a great team and everything will work out. And that's not the case.
It's not. And it's like, if you listen to some of these like conference calls at public companies or annual reports, you can tell the ones that, like, really get it. Like, example, if you read a Trupanion annual report, Daryl is very, very frank. It's not a rah thing. When they did their IPO, when they went public, they celebrated by, I think they had a picnic, and the people that couldn't make the picnic, I think, went home and ate like celebrated and ate some cupcakes or something like that.
Uh-huh.
You know, where a lot of these companies are having, $800 steak dinners and, champagne, and
yeah,
it wasn't any crazy celebration. This company just went public, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah. It's well, it's because we live an events-driven life instead of a process-driven life, where events occur inside of it. And so people celebrate the events like, well, that's it, what's next, or there isn't anything more, or I'm bored, or I've done this, because they build their belief structure around events. It's building, it's like the power of positivity, the power of rah-rah, the power of the high peak experience event, rather than the overall relentless, it never stops, every day grind of the process.
Well, like Jeff Bezos and Amazon, right? He says every day is day one.
Every day is day one, exactly.
And he actually, if you read the Amazon annual reports, which are fantastic, he attaches his I think it's the 1999. It's their first annual report as a public company. He attaches that to every annual report, saying, this is like our North Star. This is what the whole every day is. Yeah, he goes back to that original source.
Noble
document.
cause.
Yes. It's interesting too, where a lot of these like raw events, whether it's like a corporate town hall or a conference call, annual report, whatever, or team building meeting, there's always that sense too that everyone kind of like is in on the lie and no one says anything. Like everyone kind of knows it's bullshit.
Yeah. Well, I was just writing about that in a different way about Louis Farrakhan, and no one ever calls him on his bullshit. Mm-hmm. Profoundly bigoted, racist, anti-Semitic man who has been allowed to get away with it because he's somehow got the moral high ground. I'm going, I don't think so. Somebody needs to call that man on his bullshit. He is so over the hill. Yeah, you're right. That's kind of how it goes.
I just pretend like people like that don't exist.
Yeah.
Makes life easier.
Well, it makes it easier in your own little bubble.
In my own little bubble, it does.
Yeah, exactly.
There's enough interesting things for me to focus on where I don't have to pay attention to every.
Yeah, well,
wacko.
That's why like I said, I was 4 months in Uzbekistan, and the amazing thing was how many more hours I had in the day, simply because I didn't speak Uzbek, I didn't have a television, I wasn't caught up in the news, and they have zero interest in what's going on with American politics, except for that their president went to visit Donald Trump and came home with good news. That's all they care about, but I mean, they're in their own world. So I never got caught up in side conversations like we do over here because we're in the language. I need to develop filters. I have taken to. I don't think it's been 5 years or so since I've watched a news broadcast because it's all gossip. But now the commentary programs are even worse, and as we were talking about earlier, all the name calling and finger pointing and everything else like that, it doesn't forward anything I'm interested in.
What are you interested in? We're getting close to the 2 hour mark, so I want to wrap it up in a few. But what are you interested in? What are things that we should be interested in?
The bottom line, greatest, I will say, abstraction or distinction that woke me up and turned me on to what was possible in life after working on something that I consider to be my own destiny was listening to Werner Erhard say he offered that what he stood for was a world that worked for everyone with no one left out. And when I heard that, I thought I heard my entire life in that entire phrase. In that moment, I became much more interested in something that was a lot bigger than John. And it was about, where can I look to see to be of service to people? So I'm interested in service.
Yeah. And you're into servant leadership, right? That's like a thing you're into?
Yeah, I consider that the basic book for everybody.
That's by who?
It's by a guy named Robert Greenleaf.
Okay. That's actually in the academic world of leadership, servant leadership is also a big deal.
Oh, well, listen, Greenleaf wrote a paper, and the paper was 54 pages long, I believe, and it set the world...
You're a freak that you know that. 54, not 53, not 54 pages.
I'm pretty sure it's 54.
Jesus.
And that was the original. And you're
really like an alien creature. This is how you develop all this stuff. You're not a human.
There's probably 100 books that have come out of that 54-page book paper.
Do you remember the date and time that you read that 54-page book?
Probably 6 months ago.
Do you know how many characters were in the book?
Oh, I read that stat.
Maybe you are a human after all.
Yeah, I didn't read the 54 pages. I read somebody comment that there was a 54-page paper, and I went, oh, okay, right, because I see all of this servant. But the thing about it is, if you take a look at it, and I think servant leadership is actually highly influenced by the Boy Scout movement and Lord Baden-Powell's. A scout is thrifty and trustworthy and loyal and clean and all those 12 things that a scout is. And I think that had a lot influenced deeply Greenleaf and his comment on servant leadership. But servant leadership is where it starts. If you're interested in leadership, if you're interested in tribal leadership, get your basic foundation in with servant leadership and then take on tribal leadership.
And how do people go about taking on tribal leadership?
Well, you might start by reading the book, and the second is look for, you and I are putting a couple of things together. I'm kind of around, but you and I are putting some things together. We've got some things coming up on Udemy.
There is an Udemy course that you have.
Yeah, so there are courses out there, and
if people want to get in contact with you, I mean,
yeah, well,
what's the best way to reach out to you?
Email.
All right.
Yeah, I'm kind of old school. So,
what's the email? Best email to reach you at?
It's one word. It's johnKingPartners@gmail.com. So it's super simple.
I'll put a link to this. I'm trying to promote you. This is how humble. You're too humble. I'm like, how do we connect to tribal leadership? What do we do? Come on. I'm literally making you look good and promoting you right now.
That's exactly right, and I'm just letting you do it.
I know. See, that's the brilliance. You make it seem like you're letting me do it, and that's the way you promote yourself. I'm on to you.
Well, I'll tell you. I think the most popular kind of space that is between people is a space of invitation. And you keep inviting me to do things, or I keep inviting you, and we keep accepting invitations. And it's our relationship to that invitation that gives us access to leadership power. Because leadership is a distinction that is wholly inside of the invitation. If you lead 100% by permission of the people who are being led, so who you are to those people is always holding up a kind of an invitation that will, if you're good at it, will alter their lives for the better and have them engage themselves in some kind of project with other people that is a stage 4, stage 5 project and will have made a difference.
Well, I think that is a beautiful way to end this conversation this evening. Don't you agree?
Well, I do too. I think I should probably shut up now.
Yeah. Well,
but I totally appreciate this, Eric. You're so gracious and so generous and supportive, and I just really want you to know how much I appreciate that.
Well, thanks, and you're a wonderful guest. You can literally come on my show anytime.
Well, I like it. I like what you're doing. I like what you're up to. I think you're one of my picks to click for the future.
What does that mean?
Pick to click?
Yeah.
You never?
No.
Pick to click?
We almost ended it, and I was like, what does that mean?
When something is successful, it clicks.
Oh, okay. Click for me now.
So you're a pick to click.
Oh, well, I'm glad you see me like that.
Yeah. Okay, my friend.
All right.
Then I guess we will kind of head into the corral here. But I thank you. I thank you again. I hope you and
I thank you for coming on again.
And I'm glad you were able to enjoy a little wine. And
you know what? If I didn't have any wine, this still would have been wonderful with you. It just wine accentuates wonderful people, and it does the inverse as well.
Yeah, it does do that. Okay, my friend. Well, you take care, and thank you.
All right. Thank you, John. All right. Have a great night.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to the Intelligent Investing Podcast with Eric Schleien. If you'd like to connect with Eric for questions, comments, feedback, ideas, or to inquire about being on the show, please contact Eric at intelligentinvesting@gmail.com. So, in the words of Charlie Munger, I have nothing to add.